Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here today for part 3 in my kitchen tips and tricks. And we're going to be talking today about milk kefir and some of the uses for it in your kitchen, cooking and baking, things like that. Because a lot of people think of milk kefir as strictly being just something you use to make smoothies or drink straight to use as a health drink. But milk kefir has many more uses than just that. And here's the other benefit is if you have goats or cows or even sheep that you milk and you get a lot of milk coming in, this is just one way you can also preserve your excess milk, and it will last for a very, very long time in your refrigerator or even in cold storage. So first I'm going to start off, I need to get another batch going because I'm down to just a little bit here in my jar. All right, in this little jar right here are my kefir grains, my milk kefir grains. And what I do is I keep these in the fridge until I'm ready to use them. So I will dump that whole jar in there. And let me go ahead and grab the spoon. I should have done this first so you can see the size of some of these grains. There are clusters of grains right now. I got some pretty good, I got quite a bit in here. And eventually I'll get so much that I'm going to have to give them away or do something else with. But I did finally find the ones that I froze in an even smaller jar from the last time I had bought them and then put them aside for a while because I wasn't using them. And that is something you can do. You can freeze them and then thaw them and reactivate them. But I've been keeping these ones alive all along because I've been using my milk kefir regularly. So anyway, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and add some fresh organic milk to this. And I've got, since you know we haven't been able to get the local raw goat milk anymore, we've been getting our milk from Costco. They got organic milk. It's pretty good. The thing I like about it is it's in the half gallons. You can buy 3 half gallons at a time, and these freeze up beautifully. So when we make a trip into town, we just buy several boxes of the milk like this, which is there's three half gallons in each box, and then we just freeze them up. And whole milk is best. You can do this with like a 2% milk, but really whole milk is just better for you anyway, despite everything they've said. If you're getting a good organic milk, especially if it's organic raw milk, those healthy fats in there are very good for you. And it's much, and I recommend that. And then all you got to do is simply put a lid on there of any kind. It doesn't matter. You don't have to put it on super tight. You can allow it to breathe, but leave it somewhat tight so it can get fizzy in there. And here's the thing I love about milk kefir. It's ready in only 24 hours. You can leave it for 3 days if you want, though I do recommend after the first 24 hours, take your wooden spoon. Your grains will usually float up to the top. So then just lift those grains out and then you'll put them back into your jar, into your small jar. This is what I do. I'll wash this out and then I'll have it ready to go tomorrow. I'll put the grains back in here. And then I'll top this off with some fresh milk and then store it in my refrigerator immediately while I'm waiting until I need to use them again, rather than letting them sit, because the keeping them in cold storage of some sort is going to slow down the fermenting process so they don't work through the milk sugars so fast. If they work through the milk sugars too fast, they can starve and then die, and you don't want that to happen. But keeping them in the fridge keeps them alive for a very long time. Just don't forget about them. Make sure you're using them on a regular basis. Now, if you're doing stuff like what I'm going to show you today and you're doing it regularly, you won't have to worry about it because you'll keep working through that. And then because you're working through it on a regular basis, then you're constantly using those kefir grains and keeping them lively, because again, it's the milk sugars that they feed on mostly. And so just like pretty much any kind, lots of your ferments, they need some kind of sugar or carbohydrate, that is, to keep them going. Same thing goes when you're making vinegar. So now let's talk about what I like to use my kefir for. There's 3 main things that I use it for. Now there's more that you can do, and if you want to put in some comment suggestions of what you do with your milk kefir down below, please do that. But today I'm going to be focusing on just the 3 main things I use the milk kefir for in my kitchen. And one of those is what I just did this morning, is I made Mr. Rain some biscuits and gravy. Now what you're going to see here in the pictures are very small amounts because I only make enough for him because I don't eat breakfast. And I'll talk about that in another video, by the way. I'm hoping to do that fairly soon. The milk kefir makes a really great substitute for buttermilk. Why? Because buttermilk is a cultured milk and so is milk kefir. It's just a different type of culture. And I like this because I can constantly keep it going and have it coming in all the time. So when I do the biscuits, as you can see in the pictures here, you know, after I cut in the fat, whatever fat you use in your biscuits, butter, lard. I prefer organic palm shortening by Tropical Traditions. So once I get that cut into my biscuit dough, I'll then pour in some of the milk kefir, and that would replace the milk or buttermilk that you would put in your biscuits anyway. And so what that's going to do is that's going to give the biscuits more flavor. It's also going to make them a little more healthy, as well as making them more fluffy. So what I do when I'm making those biscuits is I allow the dough, once I've got it blended in there, I like to let the dough sit for a few minutes just to kind of soak basically for a bit. Then I'll cut them out and bake them. And then of course, you know, I made the gravy, put that on there. And so it's just one really good way to get a good fluffy buttermilk type biscuit. And then the other thing I do is right along the same lines is I do all my pancake batter using milk kefir now, and in replacement of buttermilk, or I actually never buy buttermilk. I have another option that I done clear up until I started doing the milk kefir on a regular basis. That option would be, if you don't have milk kefir or anything like that, you should at least have some sort of vinegar on hand, hopefully a homemade vinegar of some variety, any variety that's going to taste good in it. You take your milk, so let's say it's a cup of milk, you're going to put in at least a tablespoon of a good acidic vinegar. So make sure if you're making it yourself, you've got it down to where you know that your vinegar is at a 5% acidity or a 3.5 pH. That's going to give you the best buttermilk replacement. Put your tablespoon or so of vinegar in your measuring cup first, then pour the milk in until it's a cup. And then if you need 2 cups, then obviously double the amount of the vinegar. Again, add that in first because your whole idea is to get it up to that amount. And the vinegar is going to make it more than that if you add it in after you put in the cup of milk. And so again, let it sit for at least 5 minutes. Longer is better. The longer you allow that vinegar to sit in there in the milk, the more it's going to clabber that milk and thicken it up and make it like buttermilk. So that's one way, that's one little kitchen tip that you might want to know that I've done for years and years in order to get a buttermilk type replacement for pancakes, biscuits, and whatever else I might use it in. So today what I'm going to do real quick for you, even though I've already made breakfast today, I'm going to go ahead and whip up a small batch of pancake batter. Just show you how I use it, the milk kefir in the batter. And today I'm going to mix it directly in this container because I'm going to be putting it in the fridge so that I can cook these up for Patrick in the morning. So just remember, I'm making a small amount here because I'm only making the pancakes for him. And so obviously you're going to want to tailor this according to the size. If you're cooking for 2 people or 3 or 4, you're going to want to probably double or quadruple this. So with that in mind, I'm just going to use a small measuring cup. I've got a 1/3 cup of my home milled flour, and let's see, let's go ahead and put in another 1/3 cup. And then the other thing I'm going to add, this is going to equal a whole cup of flour, is my homemade nut flour from various nuts. So this has got pretty much all of them, but it's mostly hazel and Brazil nut. And if you're interested in how I do that, I do have a video showing how I make almond flour, but I've also talked about this in more recent videos about taking the nut pulp from making your various nut milks, drying it out, and then turning it into a flour. And then right here what I've got is some of my apple powder from after I made the apple cider from the apples from our tree. I dried up the pulp and then made a powder out of it, and so I like to put that in there for making apple cinnamon pancakes. And these are just options, of course, so you know, basically the whole idea is I'm wanting to show you how I make how I use the kefir in the pancake mix. And of course, don't forget your baking powder. So for this much, I'm going to need about, let's put in just a little bit extra. So you're going to need at least half a tablespoon. And that's more than a half tablespoon. And the reason I'm putting in a little extra is because of the heavier items in there. And then just a pinch of salt. And it's also recommended, because this will just give more for it to feed on. I've got some coconut sugar here. It's kind of packed a little bit. So to put in about a teaspoon to a tablespoon of some coconut sugar, that way you're getting some good minerals in there, and then the sugars in there are also going to help with the overall process of the making it fluffy. But this is if you allow it to sit, but we'll get to that in a minute. So obviously this is going to mix better in a round bowl. I just don't feel like dirtying up a bowl just to pour it back into this container here. But no big deal. Mix that in there. Okay, so now let's move on to the wet ingredients. So I'm going to start with just some of the milk kefir, not as much as I'm probably going to put in right away, just so I have something to mix my oil into. And for this amount, I'll probably just do, maybe a couple tablespoons of oil. And then 1 fresh egg from our chickens. This 1 egg will go with go clear up to, if you're doubling this at least. If you're quadrupling it, then you'll want to use 2 eggs. Okay, I don't want to pull all my flour in yet. I'm mostly just wanting enough liquid there so I can mix the oil and egg together real well. And then from here, then you're going to add more kefir until you get the consistency you want in your batter. We like it fairly thick when I make it, which is the other thing you have to consider is when you're using whole grain flours like I've got here, plus the addition of the dried apple powder, those are going to soak up a little more liquid, so you may need to add more than you would think if you're using just a regular unbleached flour and then no apple powder. And nut flour too, same thing with this. Any kind of thing like that is going to increase the amount of liquid you're going to need. So it's a good thing I got another batch of milk kefir going, because it looks like I'm going to use all of this. And I think this is still going to be more than enough for Patrick. So what I might end up doing with any leftover pancake batter tomorrow is I'm going to make myself some lunch out of it. Because I do eat lunch. I just don't eat breakfast or dinner. This feels pretty thick as it is. It's still going to thicken up as it sits. So tomorrow I may need to add more to this. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, since this is for tomorrow, is I'm going to leave it on the counter for a little bit, maybe up to an hour, just to let it stay at room temperature. And then I'm going to go ahead and put it in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it tomorrow morning. Now, here's the thing about your pancake batter. Is the longer you allow it to sit, no matter what milk you're using, whether you're using a vinegar clabbered milk, a buttermilk, a kefir, or even just plain milk or nut milk, it's still best to allow your batter to sit and soak for at least a good 5 minutes, at least 5 minutes. I recommend up to 15, because it's going to get more bubbly. You'll start to see it sort of bubble up, and the longer you actually allow it to sit and soak, the better it's going to be, and the healthier it's going to be as well. And it's going to be fluffier. It just makes for a much fluffier pancake when you do it that way. And so this is why it's a good idea that if you know you're going to make pancakes, get up early and get them going early so it can soak until you're ready to cook them up, or do like I'm doing here, make them the day before and just let them sit for a little bit on the counter, let the batter sit for a bit on the counter, then stick it in your fridge until you're ready to use it. I have one more thing I'm going to talk about as far as what I use the milk kefir for, but before I go on to that, I want to mention, if you're milling up your own flour fresh, like I did here, I just milled this up this morning on our Country Living grain mill, love that thing, but you end up with more than what you need, because when I mill it, it goes directly into this, from the grain mill into this container. And if I mill it more than I need at the time, I put this in the refrigerator, maybe even the freezer if I think I'm not going to use it right away. If you're making lots of breads, it shouldn't be a problem, but don't leave it out, because one of the things with whole grains is that they start to lose their nutritional value very quickly and can go rancid because of the fats and stuff that are in them. These are the good healthy things that are actually removed from the store-bought whole grain flours that you buy, and that's why it's best to mill up your own and then use it fresh and use it immediately. But if you can't use it immediately, freezing is great. It works great. Or just keep it in the fridge if you think you're going to use it the very next day or later in the day. Okay, so the last thing that I was going to talk about was using the milk kefir for making your homemade ranch dressing. And I do have a couple of different ranch dressing videos out there. They're pretty much the same thing. But anyway, I'll go ahead and link to a video in the description box down below. So don't forget to hit that little arrow under the video or the show more, which is what I'm guessing most people are going to see depending on the device you're on. And then it will drop down and show all of our various links, our affiliate links, our social media links, and also the video links that I talk about. And so the milk kefir is a really good option. You can use, you can use sour cream, you can use yogurt, homemade yogurt. I've done that before too. Homemade yogurt is another great option for the ranch dressing, but I kind of go through spurts with yogurt. Sometimes I make it a lot and I'm loving it, but other times I just get out of it for a while. And if I don't have that on hand, then the milk kefir is something I always have going because I have a lot more uses for it personally. So milk kefir is it's actually my favorite in the ranch dressing because it adds a little bit of fizz and just a little bit more tang to give it more flavor. And it just makes it so healthy. That's my other favorite thing to do with the milk kefir. And obviously, of course, you can use your milk kefir to make smoothies and various other things. The only thing we basically do when we make smoothies, quote unquote, is to make some kind of frozen treat involving fruits and stuff like I just made. Finally worked through the last of some really awesome tasting pineapple, and I just made Patrick some pineapple coconut creamsicles out of it. And in that case I usually use a half and half, whether it be mixing the whole milk with some heavy whipping cream or actually getting some of the Organic Valley half and half is another good option. It's an easy creamsicle to make, and I have lots of recipes on that. I'll go ahead and link to my playlist on the frozen treats down below as well. But you can try using the milk kefir in that too if you think it would taste good, if you think that extra tanginess would be good. You're keeping it raw because you're not cooking it, you're freezing it, so that would be a really good option. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying this video on kitchen tips and tricks, and don't forget to put your comments down below on the ways that you like to use your milk kefir and in the various things you cook, bake, or whatever. And be watching for more in this series. I think I actually have a total of 8 videos lined out. This is part 3, so I have at least 5 more to shoot. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.